The meeting hall was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. Thousands of species had gathered here, on the Coalition's central station to discuss matters of trade, diplomacy, and peace. But today, the conversation had turned dark. On the main viewing screen, a small alien appeared. His skin glowed with soft blue light and his large eyes looked tired and afraid. He stood barely 4 feet tall and his thin body seemed to shake as he spoke. "Please," the alien said through the translation system, "we are the Velic people of planet Tesh 4. The Krath Empire approaches our world. They will arrive in 12 days. We have no weapons. We have no armies. We only ask for protection under the Coalition Charter. Please help us." The image faded and the hall erupted into discussion. Representatives talked among themselves, their voices creating a wall of noise. At the back of the hall, Ambassador Patricia Cole sat with her small human delegation. She watched the other species carefully, waiting to see who would respond first. The Arkelian representative rose from his seat. His body looked like a collection of floating crystals held together by energy fields. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber. "The Arkelian Confederacy sympathizes with the Velic situation," he announced. "However, our forces are currently committed to border security in the northern sectors. We cannot spare military assets at this time." Patricia felt her jaw tighten. She knew what this meant. The Arkelians were making excuses. Next came the Zenthari ambassador, a tall being covered in metallic scales. "The Zenthari Republic maintains strict neutrality in all conflicts. We cannot engage the Krath Empire without risking our diplomatic relationships across 3 sectors." One by one, the major powers of the galaxy stood and offered their reasons for inaction. The Morphidians cited resource constraints. The Peleron Coalition mentioned prior commitments. The Telcuri Union talked about the complexity of military intervention. Each excuse sounded reasonable on its surface, but Patricia heard the truth beneath the words. Nobody wanted to fight the Krath. Nobody wanted to risk their ships and soldiers for a species that had nothing valuable to offer in return. The Velic had no rare minerals on their world. They produced no advanced technology that others desired. They were simple people who studied plants and created beautiful art. In the cold mathematics of galactic politics, they weren't worth saving. Patricia looked at her aide, Lieutenant Kevin Morris. The young man's face showed barely controlled anger. He leaned close and whispered, "Are we really going to let this happen?" Before Patricia could respond, the session moved to close the matter. The council chairman, an elderly Vorkath with 6 arms and wisdom-filled eyes, prepared to make the final statement. If there are no further comments, the council recognizes that member states have made their positions clear regarding, "I have a comment." Patricia stood up. Her voice cut through the murmuring conversations. The entire hall turned to look at the human section. Patricia felt thousands of eyes on her, but she didn't sit down. The chairman gestured for her to proceed. "The human delegation may speak." Patricia walked down to the main floor. Her steps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. She reached the speaking platform and looked up at the massive audience. "Humanity has been part of this coalition for 30 years. She began. "We're still new here. We're still learning how things work in the wider galaxy. But today we've learned something important. We've learned that when the words in your charter say mutual protection and defending the defenseless, they apparently don't mean anything." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. Patricia didn't stop. "The Velic are asking for help under the same charter that protects every species in this room. They followed the proper channels. They filed the correct requests. They did everything by your rules. And what did they get? Excuses. Every single one of you has offered excuses." The Arkelian representative rose angrily. "Ambassador Cole, you go too far. The reality of galactic politics requires—" "The reality," Patricia interrupted, "is that 12 million innocent people are going to die in less than 2 weeks. And this council is going to let it happen because it's inconvenient to stop it." The hall erupted in shouts. Some supported Patricia's words. Others demanded she be removed from the floor. The chairman called for order, his multiple arms waving for silence. When the noise died down, Patricia continued in a calmer voice. "Humanity will send what forces we can spare to defend Tesh 4. We know we're not strong enough to stop the Krath alone. We know we might fail, but we're going to try, because that's what the coalition is supposed to do. That's what being civilized is supposed to mean." She turned and walked back to her seat. The hall remained silent until she sat down. Then the arguments began again, louder than before. Some called humanity foolish. Others suggested it was a political stunt to gain favor. A few, very few, looked ashamed. The session ended with no change in position. The council would not act to save the Velic. Humanity would go alone. Far from the council station, Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, the Horizon's Edge. The vessel wasn't large or particularly powerful. It was an exploration ship, designed for surveying planets and studying phenomena, not for combat. But it was the closest human vessel to HFY. "Captain, we're receiving new orders from Earth Command," his communications officer announced. Daniel read the message on his display. The orders were clear. "Proceed to HFY immediately. Rendezvous with incoming military forces. Provide whatever assistance possible to Velic civilians." His second-in-command, Lisa Grant, walked up beside him. She was younger than Daniel, sharp-minded and efficient. She'd already pulled up tactical data on her tablet. "The Krath are bringing a full battle fleet," she said quietly. 40 warships, maybe more. Command is sending us 3 frigates and 1 destroyer. Those are all the ships Earth can spare without leaving our own colonies vulnerable." Daniel nodded slowly. He'd seen the numbers. The mathematics didn't look good. 5 ships against 40, he said. "And we're supposed to protect an entire planet." "The Velic have no defenses at all," Lisa continued. "No shields, no weapons, no bunkers. Their cities are completely exposed. If the Krath start orbital bombardment, millions will die in the first hour." Daniel walked to the main view screen. It showed the star system ahead, where HFY orbited a yellow sun not unlike Earth's own. Somewhere down there, 12 million people were waiting, hoping, praying that someone would save them. "How long until we arrive?" he asked. 7 days at maximum speed, the navigator reported. "The military ships from Earth will arrive 2 days after us." 7 days. The Krath would arrive in 12. That gave them 5 days to prepare a defense with whatever resources they had. Daniel thought about Earth's history. He thought about all the times humans had faced impossible odds. Sometimes they lost. But sometimes, through courage or luck or sheer stubborn determination, they won. And even when they lost, they made the enemy pay dearly for victory. "Set course for HFY," he ordered. "Maximum speed. And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we'll do everything we can to buy time for evacuations." As the Horizon's Edge jumped to faster-than-light travel, Daniel felt the weight of what was coming. His ship carried a crew of 85 people. Most of them were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. They were heading toward a battle they couldn't win, to defend people they'd never met from an enemy that outnumbered them 8-1. But they were going anyway. Because someone had to. Because the Velic had called for help, and only humanity had answered. In his quarters later that night, Daniel recorded a message to his family back on Earth. He didn't know if he'd survive to send another one. He kept the message simple. "I don't know how this will turn out," he said to the camera, "but I want you to know I'm proud to be here. I'm proud that when everyone else walked away, we stepped forward. Whatever happens at HFY, humanity will show the galaxy what we stand for. We stand for the people who can't stand for themselves. That's who we are. That's who we've always been at our best." He ended the recording and looked out the window at the stars rushing past. Somewhere ahead, the Velic were waiting, and somewhere behind, the rest of humanity was preparing to follow him into the fire. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humans said they didn't abandon those who needed them. The Horizon's Edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the HFY system. Captain Daniel Hayes immediately ordered full sensor sweeps of the area. The planet appeared on their screens, a beautiful blue and green world that reminded him of Earth. "Any sign of the Krath fleet?" Daniel asked. Lisa Grant checked her displays. "Negative. We have 5 days before they arrive, according to our intelligence. The other human ships will be here in 2 days." "Then we use every minute we have," Daniel said. He opened a communication channel to the planet below. "HFY, this is Captain Daniel Hayes of the Terran vessel Horizon's Edge. We're here to help you prepare for the Krath arrival." The response came quickly. A Velic face appeared on screen, his skin glowing with colors that shifted between blue and yellow. His large eyes were wet with what Daniel assumed were tears. "Captain Hayes," the Velic said, his voice breaking. "I am Elder Misthrutrees, leader of the Velic Council. We did not believe anyone would come. The Coalition abandoned us. We thought we would die alone." Daniel felt a knot in his chest. "You're not alone anymore, Elder Mist. We're not a large force, but we'll do everything in our power to protect your people. The Horizon's Edge entered orbit around Tesh 4. Daniel sent teams down to the surface immediately. He kept his science officers on the ship to coordinate defenses, but everyone else went planetside to help. When the shuttle landed in the Velic capital city, the humans got their first real look at the people they'd come to protect. The Velic stood shorter than most humans, reaching only to their chests. Their skin looked smooth and changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, most of them glowed with pale yellow, which the translator said meant fear. Commander Jack Porter led the ground team. He was a career soldier, strong and experienced, but even he felt overwhelmed looking at the Velic cities. The buildings were beautiful, made of organic materials that seemed to grow from the ground. Everything looked peaceful, artistic, designed for a people who had never known war. "They don't even have bomb shelters," Jack said to his sergeant, Nicole Freeman. "No bunkers, no reinforced structures, nothing." Nicole looked around at the crowds of Velic watching them. Children clung to their parents. The adults stared at the armed humans with expressions that mixed hope with fear. "Then we build them shelters," Nicole said. "We've got construction equipment in the shuttles. It won't be pretty, but it'll keep them alive during bombardment." The humans got to work. They identified the strongest structures in each city and reinforced them with materials from their ships. They dug underground shelters using portable drilling equipment. It was backbreaking work, and they were racing against time. The Velic helped as much as they could, but they had no experience with this kind of construction. Still, they worked tirelessly alongside the humans. Elder Mist stayed with Commander Jack throughout the process, learning what he could about human defensive tactics. "Why do you dig so deep?" Elder Mist asked as they watched Nicole's team excavate another shelter. "The Krath will attack from space first," Jack explained. "They'll drop bombs and fire energy weapons from orbit. The deeper we dig, the better protected your people will be." Elder Mist's skin flickered with dark blue colors. "This is what war looks like? This preparation for death from above? This is what survival looks like," Jack corrected gently. "War is what comes after." 2 days later, the rest of the human fleet arrived. 3 frigates and 1 destroyer dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took up defensive positions around the planet. The destroyer, named the Relentless, was commanded by Lisa Grant. Daniel had recommended her for the promotion, and she'd accepted the field command eagerly. Leading the entire military operation was Colonel Victor Stone, a gray-haired veteran who'd fought in Earth's last major conflict before humanity joined the galactic community. He came down to the planet surface to meet with Elder Mist and assess the situation. "Captain Hayes has done good work here," Victor said, inspecting the defensive preparations. "But we're still drastically outnumbered. The Krath are bringing 40 warships. We have 5. What are our chances?" Elder Mist asked quietly. Victor looked at the Velic leader for a long moment before answering honestly. "Not good. In a straight fight, we'd lose quickly. So we won't fight straight. We'll use every trick we know. We'll make them pay for every inch of space. We'll buy time for evacuations." "Evacuations?" Elder Mist's skin flashed with bright white, which meant confusion. "But where would we go? We have no ships large enough to carry our population." "Neither do we," Victor admitted. But Captain Hayes sent a message back to Coalition Space. He's asking for help for any ships that can come. If we can hold the Krath off long enough, maybe others will arrive to evacuate your people. It was a desperate plan, built on hope and the belief that someone, somewhere, would have the courage to help. Elder Mist understood this, and his skin glowed with orange gratitude mixed with red sorrow. "You came knowing you might die here," Elder Mist said softly. "You came knowing we cannot repay you." "Why?" Victor thought about the question. He'd been asked it by his own officers, by Earth Command, even by his wife before he left. The answer was both simple and complex. "Because it's right," he finally said. "My species has a long history of war. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt each other and destroyed our own world more times than I can count. But we learned something from all that pain. We learned that the strong should protect the weak, not prey on them. We learned that courage means standing up when others sit down. If we forget those lessons, then all our suffering was for nothing." Elder Mist reached out and touched Victor's hand. For the Velic, physical contact with outsiders was deeply significant. It meant trust and acceptance. "We will remember this," Elder Mist said. "However this ends, the Velic will remember that humans came when no one else would." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. The humans placed orbital mines around the planet. They set up anti-aircraft weapons at key locations. They trained Velic volunteers in basic evacuation procedures. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was all they had. On the ships in orbit, Lisa Grant coordinated with the other captains. They developed a defensive strategy that relied on speed and unpredictability. The human ships were smaller and faster than Krath vessels. They would use hit-and-run tactics, trying to damage the enemy fleet while avoiding direct confrontation. Daniel Hayes moved the Horizon's edge to a position near the system's asteroid belt. He had a plan, something risky that would only work once. Sergeant Nicole Freeman had helped him plant nuclear mines throughout the asteroids. If they could lure Krath ships into the belt, they might destroy several at once. On the 5th day, the sensors detected incoming ships. 43 Krath vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They moved in tight formation, confident and powerful. Colonel Victor Stone stood in the command center on the planet's surface. Around him, his officers monitored every screen and sensor. He opened a channel to all human forces. "This is Colonel Stone to all units. The Krath have arrived. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to buy time. Every minute we hold them is another minute for help to arrive. Every Krath ship we damage is one less threat to the Velic. Do your duty and do it well. Stone out." He closed the channel and looked at Commander Jack Porter. "Get every Velic civilian into the shelters, now." Jack nodded and began shouting orders. Across the planet, sirens began to wail. The Velic had never heard such sounds before. They were terrifying, urgent, the sound of approaching death. In orbit, the Krath fleet broadcast a message. It appeared on every human ship's screen simultaneously. The image showed a massive insectoid creature, covered in black armor plating with multiple eyes that glowed red. "I am War Leader Skrath of the Krath Empire," the creature announced. "You are human forces, yes? The new species that thinks itself brave? You have one chance to surrender and leave this system. If you refuse, you will be destroyed along with the pathetic creatures you attempt to protect." Colonel Stone took the communication personally. He stood before the camera in the command center, his weathered face calm and determined. "War Leader Skrath, this is Colonel Victor Stone of the Terran Defense Force. We don't abandon those who need us. If you want this world, you'll have to go through us." The transmission ended. For a moment, space remained still and silent. Then the Krath fleet began to move forward, weapons powering up, ready to sweep aside the tiny human force that dared to stand against them. On Tesh 4, in the underground shelters, Velic families huddled together in the darkness. Above them, the humans prepared to fight a battle they could not win. The first shots would be fired within minutes. The Battle of Tesh 4 was about to begin. War Leader Skrath studied the tactical display on his command ship. 5 human vessels stood between his fleet and the planet, 5 against 43. The numbers were almost insulting. He had expected the humans to flee when they saw his forces, but instead they held their position. "Send forward Battle Group 7, Skrath ordered. 10 ships. Destroy the human forces quickly, then begin planetary bombardment." His tactical officer, a younger Krath warrior, hesitated. "War Leader, should we not use overwhelming force? These humans have no reason to stand and fight. They may have a trap prepared." Skrath's mandibles clicked with amusement. "A trap? With 5 small ships? No, they are simply foolish. We will teach them the price of foolishness. Send the battle group forward." 10 Krath cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the human defensive line. Each ship was twice the size of the largest human vessel. Their weapons were charged and ready. This should be over quickly. On the bridge of the Relentless, Lisa Grant watched the approaching enemy ships. Her hands gripped the arms of her command chair tightly, but her voice remained steady. "Weapons, confirm firing solutions on targets 1 through 3. Engineering, I need maximum power to engines on my mark. Navigation, prepare evasive pattern Delta." Her officers called out confirmations. Lisa had trained these people herself. They were good at their jobs and they trusted her. That trust felt heavy right now, knowing what she was about to ask them to do. "All ships, this is Relentless," she broadcast to the other human vessels. "Execute Plan Alpha on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark." The human ships scattered in different directions, moving fast. The Krath cruisers tried to adjust their targeting, but the small human vessels were quicker than expected. The Relentless fired its main weapons at the closest Krath ship, scoring hits along its hull. The damage wasn't critical, but it made the enemy vessel slow down to redirect power to shields. Meanwhile, Captain Daniel Hayes pushed the horizon's edge toward the asteroid belt. 6 Krath cruisers chased after him, seeing an easy target trying to run. Daniel watched them close the distance on his sensors, waiting for the right moment. "Captain, they're gaining," his navigator warned. "They'll be in weapon range in 30 seconds. "Good," Daniel said calmly. "That's exactly where I want them. Nicole, are the mines ready?" On the planet's surface in the command center, Sergeant Nicole Freeman sat at a remote control station. She watched the tactical display showing Daniel's ship and the pursuing Krath vessels. Her finger hovered over the detonation controls. "Ready, Captain," she confirmed. "Just get them into the target zone." Daniel flew the horizon's edge between 2 large asteroids. The Krath ships followed, spreading out slightly to surround their prey. They didn't notice the small devices attached to rocks throughout the field. Why would they? The devices looked like ordinary sensor buoys or communication relays. "Now," Daniel shouted. Nicole pressed the button. 50 nuclear mines exploded simultaneously throughout the asteroid field. The chain reaction created a wave of destruction that caught all 6 Krath cruisers. 4 of them disappeared in the explosions instantly. The other 2 survived but were badly damaged. Their hulls torn open, systems failing. On the Krath command ship, War Leader Scrath stared at his display in shock. He'd just lost 6 ships in seconds. Alarms blared across his bridge. His tactical officer worked frantically to restore order to their formation. "How?" Scrath demanded. "How did they destroy 6 cruisers?" "They mined the asteroid field, War Leader," his officer reported. "A trap, as I warned. They lured our ships into it deliberately." Scrath's rage was cold and calculating. These humans had made him look foolish. They would pay for that. But first, he needed to approach them with more respect. They were clearly more dangerous than he'd assumed. "Recall the forward battle group," he ordered. "Reform the fleet. We attack together with full force. I want those human ships destroyed immediately." The remaining Krath ships pulled back and regrouped. The entire fleet began advancing, weapons charged, shields at maximum. This time there would be no underestimating the enemy. Lisa Grant saw the enemy response on her sensors. The entire Krath fleet was coming straight at them now. No more testing, no more small groups. This was the real battle. "Colonel Stone, the Krath are committing everything," she reported. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they're in range." On the ground, Victor Stone processed the information. They'd destroyed 6 enemy ships and damaged 2 more. That was better than he'd hoped for. But now came the hard part. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions around the planet," Victor ordered. "Use the orbital defense platforms. Make them work for every meter of space." The human ships retreated to positions above Tesh 4. They'd placed automated defense platforms in orbit, armed with missiles and energy weapons. The platforms wouldn't last long against the Krath fleet, but they'd add to the firepower and create more targets for the enemy to deal with. The Krath fleet arrived like a hammer falling. Their ships opened fire from long range, sending waves of energy and missiles at the human positions. The defense platforms fired back, their weapons bright against the darkness of space. Lisa pushed the Relentless into a steep dive, dodging incoming fire. She returned shots whenever she had a clear target, trying to hit engines or weapon systems rather than the heavily armored hulls. Around her, the other human ships danced through the battle space, too fast to pin down but too small to do serious damage. A Krath dreadnought broke through the defensive line and positioned itself for planetary bombardment. Its weapons began to charge, preparing to rain destruction on the Velic cities below. "That dreadnought is targeting the planet," Daniel reported urgently. "Someone has to stop it." Lisa looked at her tactical display. The dreadnought was massive, 3 times the size of her destroyer. Its shields were at full strength. A direct attack would be suicide. But if it fired on the planet, thousands of Velic would die. She made her decision in seconds. "All power to engines," she ordered her crew. "I'm going to ram it." Her bridge crew looked at her in shock. Her second officer started to protest, but Lisa cut him off. "We don't have time to argue. Everyone to escape pods now." "That's an order. I'll handle the ship alone." "Captain, you can't go," Lisa shouted. "That's a direct order. Get to the pods and launch." Her crew hesitated for only a moment, then began evacuating. They knew better than to waste time arguing when lives were at stake. Within 2 minutes, escape pods were launching from the Relentless, scattering away from the battle. Lisa sat alone on the bridge. She rerouted all ship systems to her command station. Full power to engines, all safety systems offline. She aimed the Relentless directly at the Krath dreadnought. "This is Commander Lisa Grant to all human forces," she broadcast. "Tell my father I'm sorry I won't make it home. Tell him I'm proud to serve. Tell him this meant something." She pushed the engines to maximum, then beyond. The Relentless accelerated faster than it was designed to go. The ship's frame groaned under the stress. Lisa aimed for the dreadnought's main reactor, visible through her sensors. The Krath noticed her approach too late. They tried to target the small ship racing toward them, but Lisa was moving too fast. The Relentless struck the dreadnought at 3,000 kilometers per second. The collision released energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. The dreadnought's shields collapsed instantly. The destroyer punched through the armor and into the reactor core. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire battlefield. On the Krath command ship, Skrath watched one of his most powerful vessels die. The human had deliberately sacrificed herself and her ship to stop the bombardment. The other human vessels had stopped firing just for a moment, as if in respect for their fallen comrade. "These humans fight like demons," his tactical officer said quietly. Skrath had to agree. In his long military career, he'd never seen such desperate courage. The humans had to know they were going to lose, yet they kept fighting. They kept dying for what? For aliens they didn't even know? "Continue the attack," Skrath ordered, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "But be cautious. These humans clearly do not fear death." The battle raged for hours. The human ships were reduced to 3 frigates and the horizon's edge. The orbital platforms were destroyed. But the Krath had lost 15 ships total now, with many more damaged. The price for this planet was higher than Skrath had expected. On the ground, Commander Jack Porter and his Marines held positions at key evacuation points. Krath drop troops had landed, trying to secure areas for ground invasion. The fighting was fierce and close. Jack fired his rifle at an advancing Krath soldier. The insectoid warrior's armor absorbed the first shots, but the third burst found a weak point. The creature fell and 2 more took its place. "Fall back to position 2, Jack ordered his squad. "Use the buildings for cover. Make them work for it." His Marines retreated in good order, firing as they went. The Krath were individually stronger and better armored, but the humans fought smarter. They used cover, set traps, coordinated their fire. Every meter of ground cost the Krath casualties. In the underground shelters, the Valak huddled in darkness and fear. They could hear explosions above, feel the ground shake with each impact. Elder Mist moved through the shelters, trying to comfort his people. Captain Daniel Hayes sat in his damaged command chair aboard the horizon's edge. His ship had taken hits from a dozen different weapons. Half his systems were offline. His crew was exhausted, running on nothing but determination and stimulants. But they were still fighting. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," his sensor officer reported. "Multiple faster-than-light signatures at the edge of the system." Daniel's heart sank. Had the Krath called for reinforcements? If more enemy ships arrived, this battle would be over in minutes. "How many?" he asked tiredly. "I can't get an exact count." "At least 20. "No, 30. "Wait, the number keeps growing." "Captain, there are ships dropping out of faster-than-light all across the system edge." Daniel pulled up the sensor display. What he saw made him lean forward in disbelief. Ships were appearing everywhere, dozens of them. But they weren't Krath vessels. The identification codes showed Terran signatures. Velnari markings, Polanian transport ships, independent traders, and species he'd never even heard of. "Get me a communication channel," Daniel ordered, his voice shaking slightly. "I need to know what's happening." A message came through, audio only at first, then video. The face that appeared on screen was human, older with gray hair and admiral stars on his uniform. "This is Admiral Stephen Grant of the Terran Defense Force carrier Washington. We received your message, Captain Hayes. Sorry it took us so long to get here. We brought some friends." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He wiped them away quickly. "Admiral Grant, we're down to 2 frigates and my ship. We can't hold much longer." "You don't have to," the Admiral replied. "You've held long enough. Now it's our turn. Grant out." The Admiral's face disappeared, replaced by a tactical view of the arriving fleet. Daniel counted the ships and couldn't believe the numbers. 8 human destroyers, 20 frigates, a full carrier group with the Washington at its center, and that was just the Terran forces. The Velnari had sent 4 heavy cruisers. The Polanian medical ships were accompanied by 6 destroyers for protection. There were independent mercenary groups flying under a dozen different flags. Small defense forces from minor species who'd heard humanity's call and decided to answer it. 43 Allied ships had arrived, nearly matching the Krath fleet in numbers. But more importantly, these were fresh forces with full weapons and shields, facing an enemy that had been fighting for 2 days straight. On the Krath command ship, War Leader Skrath stared at his sensors in growing horror. His fleet had been battered by the desperate human defense. He'd lost 15 ships destroyed and another 8 too damaged to fight effectively. Now he faced an entire fleet of reinforcements. War Leader, we're receiving a transmission, his communications officer announced. Admiral Grant's face appeared on Skrath's screen. The human admiral looked calm and professional, but his eyes were cold as ice. War Leader Skrath, this is Admiral Stephen Grant commanding a coalition volunteer fleet. My daughter died buying time for us to arrive. Those 5 ships you've been fighting held you off for 2 days against impossible odds. They showed you what humans are capable of when protecting the innocent. Now you're going to see what we do when protecting our own. Skrath's mandibles clicked nervously. The human's words carried weight. These weren't the desperate defenders he'd been fighting. These were fresh troops who'd just watched their comrades die. They would be angry, motivated, and dangerous. You have one chance to withdraw, Grant continued. Leave the system now or we will destroy your fleet. You've already lost too many ships. Don't make this a complete disaster for your empire. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Skrath looked at his tactical display, calculating odds and outcomes. His fleet was tired and damaged. The new arrivals were fresh and motivated. In a straight battle, the outcome was uncertain at best, and even if he won, the cost would be devastating. He'd already failed his mission. The planet was defended. The Velic would survive. His superiors would be angry no matter what he did now. But there was a difference between failing a mission and losing an entire fleet. Recall all forces, Skrath ordered quietly. We're withdrawing. His officers looked shocked. War Leader, we can still fight. No, Skrath cut him off. We cannot win here, and even trying would cost us everything. The humans have proven their point. We underestimated them. We underestimated their willingness to die for strangers. I will not compound that error by throwing away what remains of this fleet. The Krath ships began pulling back, abandoning their attack positions. They regrouped into defensive formation and slowly withdrew toward the edge of the system. The Allied fleet let them go, content with the victory. On Tesh 4, in the underground shelters, the Velic felt the explosions stop. The ground no longer shook. The terrifying sounds of battle faded away. Elder Mist looked at his communications device, afraid to hope. Colonel Stone? He called out. What's happening? Victor Stone's tired face appeared on the small screen. The human looked like he hadn't slept in days, but he was smiling. It's over, Elder Mist. The Krath are retreating. We won. You're safe. The Elder's skin erupted in brilliant colors, cycling through every shade of emotion. Around him, Velic began to cry, holding each other, unable to believe they'd survived. The humans? Elder Mist asked. How many did you lose? Victor's smile faded. Too many. But they didn't die for nothing. You're alive. Your children are alive. Your world is safe. That's what they fought for. As the all-clear signal sounded, the Velic began emerging from their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw ships in orbit, ships that had come to save them. Most of those ships bore human markings, but there were others too. Species from across the galaxy who'd answered humanity's call. Commander Jack Porter and his surviving Marines gathered in the main square of the capital city. They were dirty, exhausted, and many were wounded, but they stood at attention as Velic civilians began to surround them. At first, the Velic just stood there staring at these aliens who'd fought and died to protect them. Then slowly, one small child broke from the crowd and approached Jack. The child held out something, a flower native to Tesh 4, with petals that glowed softly in the fading light. Jack knelt down and accepted the flower. The child touched his hand, the way Elder Mist had touched Colonel Stone days before. Then another Velic came forward with a flower. Then another. Soon, every Marine was surrounded by Velic offering flowers and touches, their skin glowing with colors that meant gratitude and family. In orbit, Captain Daniel Hayes docked the badly damaged Horizon's Edge with the carrier Washington. He walked through corridors that felt strange after days in combat. When he reached the Admiral's ready room, he stopped to compose himself before entering. Admiral Stephen Grant stood when Daniel entered. The Admiral was older, his hair completely gray, his face lined with years of command. He studied Daniel for a long moment. "You knew my daughter?" Grant asked quietly. "Yes, sir. Commander Lisa Grant was the finest officer I've served with. She saved thousands of Velic lives when she rammed that dreadnought. She's a hero, sir." Grant nodded slowly. His eyes were red, but he maintained control. "She was always brave. Even as a child, she never backed down from what she thought was right." He paused. "I'm proud of her. And I'm proud of what you and your crew did here. You held against impossible odds. We had good reason to hold, sir. The Velic needed us. The galaxy needed you," Grant corrected. "You reminded everyone what the Coalition is supposed to stand for. Before your message reached Earth, I was just another admiral commanding a fleet. But when I heard what was happening here, when I heard that my daughter and a handful of brave people were dying to protect innocence while the rest of the galaxy watched, I knew I had to come. And I wasn't the only one who felt that way." Daniel thought about the diverse fleet that had arrived, ships from species that had nothing to gain by fighting the Krath, mercenaries who'd volunteered without payment, medical vessels that had traveled across dangerous space just to help with rescue operations. "How did you convince them all to come?" Daniel asked. "I didn't," Grant replied. "Your message did. You sent out a call that said humanity was making a stand for what's right. People across the galaxy heard that call and decided they wanted to be part of it. Some of those ships out there belong to species that barely know humans, but they came anyway, because you showed them what real courage looks like." The Admiral walked to his window, looking out at the planet below. The Galactic Coalition has been around for thousands of years. It's supposed to protect member species and maintain peace, but somewhere along the way it forgot what those words mean. It became about politics and trade agreements and protecting interests. You reminded them that it's supposed to be about people, about doing what's right even when it's hard. Daniel joined him at the window. On the planet's surface, he could see lights starting to come back on in the cities. The Velic were emerging from their shelters, beginning to rebuild. They would survive. Their children would grow up free. "That's what mattered. What happens now?" Daniel asked. Grant smiled slightly. "Now the real work begins. We rebuild what was damaged. We help the Velic recover. And we make damn sure the galaxy never forgets what happened here. This battle is going to change things." 6 months after the Battle of Tesh 4, Ambassador Patricia Cole stood before the Galactic Coalition Council once again. But this time the atmosphere was completely different. The chamber was packed, and every representative watched her with respect rather than dismissal. "The Tesh 4 protocols," Patricia announced, holding up a data tablet, "represent a fundamental shift in how this coalition protects its members. Never again will a species cry for help and receive only silence. Never again will we count the cost before we count the lives at stake." She walked slowly across the speaking floor, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of species. "These protocols mandate immediate response to existential threats against member species. They create a permanent rapid response force, drawing volunteers from all coalition members. They establish clear criteria for when military intervention is not just permitted, but required." The Arkelian representative rose to speak. His crystalline form seemed dimmer than Patricia remembered, as if he carried shame that dulled his natural glow. "Ambassador Cole, the Arkelian Confederacy wishes to express our deepest regret for our failure to act during the Tesh 4 crisis. We should have stood with humanity. We should have protected the Velic. We failed the most basic test of civilization. We support these protocols completely, and we pledge significant military forces to the new defense initiative." One by one, other representatives stood to voice support. The Zenthari offered funding. The Morphidians committed ships. Even species that had been silent during the original crisis now rushed to be part of the solution. The political pressure from their own populations had been too great to ignore. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had forced the galaxy to look at itself in the mirror, and most didn't like what they saw. Good. That discomfort would drive real change. The vote was nearly unanimous. The Tesh 4 protocols became law within the Galactic Coalition. A new organization, the Coalition Defense Initiative, was formally established with Admiral Stephen Grant as its first commander. On Earth, in a military cemetery overlooking the ocean, a memorial service was held for the 147 humans who died defending Tesh 4. The names were read aloud, one by one, as their families listened. Among those names was Commander Lisa Grant, who'd sacrificed her ship and her life to stop the bombardment of the Velic capital. Admiral Grant stood at his daughter's memorial stone. It was simple, like all military markers, but the inscription carried weight. She gave everything so that others might live. Colonel Victor Stone stood beside him, along with Captain Daniel Hayes and the other survivors of the battle. They wore their dress uniforms, medals gleaming in the sunlight. Behind them, a delegation of Velic waited respectfully, having traveled across space to attend the ceremony. Elder Mist approached the Admiral slowly. The Velic leader's skin showed deep purple, the color of profound respect and sorrow. "Admiral Grant," Elder Mist said through his translator, "your daughter is honored among my people as a great hero. We have created a garden on Tesh 4 where we plant a tree for each human who died protecting us. Your daughter's tree is at the center, and it will be tended by Velic volunteers for as long as our species exists." Grant nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He'd lost his daughter, but her death had meant something. 12 million Velic lived because she'd been brave. That didn't ease the pain, but it gave it purpose. "We have something for you," Elder Mist continued. He gestured, and younger Velic came forward carrying a small plant in a container. "This is a seedling from your daughter's tree. We hoped you might plant it here, so that part of her memory grows on both our worlds." Grant accepted the plant carefully. Its leaves glowed with soft blue light, beautiful and delicate. He knelt by his daughter's marker and planted it there, in earth soil mixed with soil from Tesh 4 that the Velic had brought. "Thank you," he said quietly. "She would have liked this." Across the galaxy, the story of Tesh 4 spread like wildfire. It was told in schools, discussed in homes, debated in government chambers. The humans who'd stood alone against impossible odds became legends. Songs were written about them. Artists created memorials. Their example inspired millions. On the planet Velnor, home of the warrior culture that had sent cruisers to join the battle, young soldiers trained with renewed purpose. Their instructors taught them about the human defense of Tesh 4, using it as an example of true courage. The Velnari had always valued strength, but now they began to value the kind of strength that protected the weak. In the Polanian capital, a statue was erected showing a human marine standing beside a Velic child. The inscription read, "They came when no one else would." Polanian leaders, whose own species had been refugees centuries ago, made it a national priority to never forget what happened when the galaxy abandoned the vulnerable. Commander Jack Porter left active military service. He'd fought enough battles, but he didn't stop working. Along with Sergeant Nicole Freeman, he established the Civilian Emergency Response Training Program on Earth. They taught ordinary people how to evacuate safely, how to build emergency shelters, how to coordinate rescue operations. Their program was adopted by 17 coalition species within the first year. Jack traveled to their worlds, sharing knowledge that had been purchased with human lives at Tesh 4. Everywhere he went, people thanked him for his service. He always responded the same way. "Thank the ones who didn't come home. They paid the real price." The Krath Empire retreated from coalition space after Tesh 4. The humiliation of their defeat had created political chaos in their government. War leader Skrath was demoted and exiled for his failure. But in secret, other Krath military leaders began planning for the future. They studied human tactics, analyzed the battle records, and prepared for an eventual rematch. The defeat at Tesh 4 wasn't forgotten by the Krath either, but they remembered it as a shame that needed avenging. Captain Daniel Hayes took command of a new destroyer, the Lisa Grant, named in honor of his fallen friend. It was one of 20 new ships built specifically for the Coalition Defense Initiative. These vessels were designed for rapid response, able to reach crisis zones quickly and hold position until reinforcements arrived. Daniel's first mission took him to a remote system where a colony was threatened by pirates. He arrived with his ship and 2 frigates, and the pirates fled without firing a shot. News of Tesh 4 had spread far. Everyone knew that humans didn't back down, didn't surrender, and made any fight cost more than it was worth. 5 years after the battle, a group of young Velic arrived on Earth as exchange students. They were the first generation to grow up after the crisis, raised with stories of the humans who'd saved them. Among them was a bright student named Windcarry Seed, who'd adopted the human nickname Wendy at the suggestion of her teacher. Wendy stood in front of the Earth Naval Academy, looking up at the impressive buildings. She'd applied to become an officer, wanting to serve aboard human ships. The application process had been difficult. No alien had ever attended the academy before. But after lengthy debates, Earth's government had decided that if humans were going to fight for other species, they should be willing to serve alongside them too. She was nervous as she entered the administration building. The human staff looked at her curiously. She was so much smaller than they were, her glowing skin so different from their appearance, but the commandant of the academy greeted her warmly. "Cadet Windcarry Seed," he said, reading her full name from his tablet. "Welcome to the academy. You're making history today. Please call me Wendy, sir," she replied in carefully practiced English. "And I'm not here to make history. I'm here to learn how to protect people, the way your species protected mine." The commandant smiled. "Then you're here for exactly the right reasons. Let me show you to your quarters." As Wendy walked through the academy halls, human cadets stopped to stare. Some smiled. Others whispered to each other. She felt out of place, small and alien. But she remembered the stories her parents had told her about the battle. She remembered the names of the humans who died protecting HFY. If they could face a Krath fleet, she could face some uncomfortable stares. On HFY itself, life had returned to normal. The Velic rebuilt their cities, planted new gardens, and created art celebrating their survival. But they were no longer the naive people they'd been before. They understood now that the galaxy could be dangerous. They'd created a defense force of their own, not to attack others, but to support evacuation and rescue operations if crisis ever came again. Elder Mist had retired from political leadership, but he spent his days in the garden memorial, tending the trees that represented fallen humans. It was meditation for him, a way to process what had happened. Young Velic often found him there and asked him to tell the story again. "Were the humans afraid?" a child asked him one day, sitting beneath the tree planted for Commander Lisa Grant. "Of course they were afraid," Elder Mist replied gently. "Fear is natural when facing danger. But they came anyway. That's what made them heroes. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage despite it." "Why did they help us?" the child asked. "We had nothing to give them." Elder Mist thought about Colonel Stone's words spoken in a command bunker while the battle raged above. Because it was the right thing to do.